Every leader I've ever encountered has at least these 5 core desires that we're going to be talking about today on the Spirit-Filled Leadership Podcast. We're going to be talking about these desires and how do we fulfill them. Stay tuned. A lot of times our instincts will be to try to fix it, Welcome back to the Spirit-Filled Leadership Podcast. I'm Pete Burak. Miguel's behind the camera. We're ready to go. We're talking today about what I'm calling the 5 core desires of a leader. Now, every leader probably has more than these 5 desires, but these are 5 consistent desires that I've seen, not just in leaders, fun fact, but basically everyone I've ever met that is trying to live as a disciple of Jesus. As they start to walk the path of being his disciple, these desires manifest themselves and they start to we become more and more aware of these in our heart. And the kind of the world's version of these, you'll be able to see they're not like inconsistent with a lot of what the world offers, but there's a purified, sanctified, Christianized version of these desires. In fact, they're pure desires that the Lord is able and willing to fulfill and more deeply purifying us as we walk the path of his disciple, as his disciples. So let's dive right in. The 5 core desires I'm calling of a leader or of a disciple. The first one is freedom. I desire to be free. The question is am I free? What does it look like to be free? Second is whole. I want to be whole. I want to be healthy. I want to be unified. So what does it look like to be whole? The third is to be good, or the fancy word for that is to be holy. So I want to be free. I want to be whole. I want to be holy. I want to contribute or have impact. I want to do something great with myself and with my life and with my gifts. And then finally, the 5th one is I want friendship. I want connection. I want unity. I want interaction and deep, authentic union with other people. Core desires: to be free, to be whole, to be holy or to be good, to have impact, and to have friendship. What's interesting about all 5 of those desires, and this probably isn't going to be earth-shattering to you watching this, is that our relationship with Jesus is the source and is the culmination and is the fulfillment of all 5 of those desires. That through encountering him, surrendering to him, and here's then the secret, intimacy and obedience to him, all 5 of these desires begin to be fulfilled, to be purified, and to not just being filled in an adequate level, but all of a sudden a life of abundance starts to emerge in each of these 5 areas. So the secret to a leader having these desires fulfilled is not so much a strategic plan. It's not so much trying to generate it for myself. It's certainly not the affirmation of others. It's not even so much like my impact of what I think I've accomplished that fulfills these desires. The lead measure or the starting point of these desires being fulfilled is first a renewed, deepened, and consistent encounter with Jesus. To engage with and to recognize the living God who loves me. Jesus is alive. He's looking me in the eye. He's calling me by name. The starting point of fulfilling all of our desire is knowing and encountering Jesus, which then leads to whether or not we surrender to him and allow him to be the Lord of our life. Do we drop our nets and follow him? Or do we walk away sad like the rich young man? Or the people who said this saying is tough. They encountered Jesus. They met him. But his invitation was one they didn't respond to in faith. They didn't surrender. They held on to their lives in their own way and didn't submit to him. So we have an encounter, we have a surrender, and then through that surrender, we begin this process, this simultaneous kind of beautiful blending of intimacy and obedience. Intimacy and obedience. That the more we surrender to him, the more we spend time with him, the more we let him love us, the more his love dwells in us, the more we want to obey him. And then the more we obey him, the more we avail ourselves to a deeper and deeper relationship with him. Obedience right now in today's world is such an ugly word. It's like obedience is like, why would you ever obey anyone or anything? That the epitome of freedom is not to obey, to cast off the shackles of anything that would ask you to submit to something. But in the divine economy, in the relationship with God, it's actually the opposite. The Lord doesn't separate obedience and intimacy. His love for us is tied to our saying yes to him. Of course, his love is endless. Of course, his love transcends whether or not we say yes. He still loved the rich young man, right? He still loved the people that walk from him. But the people's experience of his love, the being transformed by his love, persisting in his love, and being able to kind of celebrate and experience the fullness of what his love can do in us, absolutely ties to whether or not we obey him. He says this in the Gospel of John, "You are my friends if you do what I command you." Over and over and over again. And I'm going to be writing a booklet on this soon of just like, what does obedience look like in the New Testament? But over and over and over again in Jesus and St. Peter and St. John and Paul, they all talk about doing what God commands. And we do what God commands because he loves us, because we love him. And the more we love him, the more we obey him. And the more we obey him, the more we're able to love him and receive his love and be transformed by his love. And in this process of encounter, surrender, intimacy, and obedience, what emerges is we become free. We become whole. We become holy. We become glorious. Impact. And we're known. We're seen. We're friends. And the Lord fulfills our desires, not just in a temporal way, but in an eternal way. So to be able to recognize that oftentimes we might be wounded in one of these 5 desires, so that we've done things or submitted to things that have not allowed us to be free, or there's wounding in our life that has not made us whole, or there's persistent sin that's existing that is keeping us from being good, or there's a fear of failure, or a pride of not being able to utilize your gifts for impact, or maybe you just have cut yourself off from other people and from God, and you're not experiencing that need for connection and friendship and intimacy. Whatever those 5 desires are that are twisted and wounded, the response to that, again, is not to set out a plan, not to set out a project, not to kind of say, okay, here it is, time to work on myself so that God can do something through me. No. As we become aware of how these desires are either not being fulfilled or being fulfilled insufficiently, it goes back to encounter, surrender, intimacy, and obedience. So these 5 desires are God-given. He wants us to be free. He wants us to be whole. He wants us to be holy. He wants us to have impact, and he wants us to have friends and to be his friend. And so in the course of our life as leaders, we shouldn't be aware of when we see this in ourselves, or the desire to fulfill these desires in ourselves and the people we're leading. To know that everyone you encounter, everyone you meet, everyone you walk with, every Christian who's trying to develop as a disciple is also trying to have these desires filled. And so for them, it's the same process for you. Encounter, surrender, intimacy, and obedience. This has been the Spirit-Filled Leadership Podcast. I'm Pete Burek. I hope you have enjoyed this. We love doing it, and keep letting us know how you've been blessed by it, and we'll see you soon. God bless.
Come, take my hand.